Nelson Sakaguchi, a bank executive from one of the largest banks in Brazil, received a life-changing call. On the other end of the line was the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. He wanted to grow the country by building a significant airport, unlike any the country had ever seen. The project would cost $242 million, and Nelson would be promised a $10 million commission for investing in the project. They met in London, and Nelson shook hands with the governor, the deputy governor, and the director of aviation. They showed Nelson all the business plans, discussed the entire infrastructure, and convinced him completely. They shook hands and made a deal, which was a home run investment for Nelson. However, there was just one problem. It was all a lie. This is the insane story of how one of the most intelligent criminals in history sold a fake airport for $242 million. The man behind this insane story is Emmanuel. There is a bit of mystery surrounding Emmanuel and his upbringing, but it's assumed that he was born anywhere between 1950 and 1955 in the heart of Lagos, Nigeria. From a young age, Emmanuel aspired to be rich and was driven by an insatiable desire to escape poverty and rise above the ordinary. He was gifted and intelligent for his age, and it was in the electrifying world of finance that Emmanuel saw his ticket to prosperity. As a young adult, he ventured into the world of banking, where he quickly gained a reputation for his sharp intellect and ability to navigate the complex world of finance. Through hard work, perseverance, charm, and charisma, he climbed the corporate ladder and later became the director of the Union Bank of Nigeria. Now, Emmanuel is nude, and the memory of his past is haunting him. He had made significant progress in his life. He no longer lived in poverty and had become the director of a reputable bank, but he wanted more. Emmanuel desired the kind of money that could buy him immense power and influence, so he came up with a plan that would etch his name into the financial history books forever. In the early 1990s, Nigeria was undergoing a transformation. The nation had recently declared Abuja as its new capital, igniting a frenzy of economic development. Priority number one for the Nigerian government was large-scale infrastructure projects, with a primary focus on building a world-class international airport. Emmanuel saw this as the golden opportunity he had been waiting for and came up with a brilliant idea. He decided to sell a fake airport and trick investors out of millions. However, Emmanuel couldn't pull this off all on his own. He hand-picked a group of 5 individuals, all highly skilled in finance and banking. Their deep knowledge of the financial sector, as well as their connections, would make it easier to pull off the heist of the century. The plan involved each of them impersonating high-ranking officials. Once everyone was aware of their role and the details of the plan, it was time to execute. The team started the scam by sending detailed faxes to banks worldwide. These faxes contained an official letter pretending to be from a top Nigerian official named Taristia William, who supposedly worked in the financial planning and budgeting department of the Nigerian Ministry of Aviation, an identity that the team made up. The letter announced Nigeria's intent to develop a significant airport project in Abuja, a city experiencing rapid growth since being declared the new capital in 1991. After sending all the faxes, the team waited patiently to see if anyone would bite onto their bait of lies. Time passed, and it seemed like no one was interested. However, they received a fax back from a man named Nelson Sakaguchi from Banco Noroeste, the central bank of Brazil. Nelson said he was highly interested in the proposal, and his bank had been looking for new investment opportunities for quite some time. As Emmanuel read the fax, a smirk appeared across his face and the rest of the team. The plan was now in full effect. Emmanuel immediately called Nelson, but he couldn't just be himself for the scam to work. He needed to represent someone of great power and authority, someone that could be trustworthy. So instead, he pretended to be the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Paul Oguma. This was before the rise of the internet, so you couldn't just look up what the actual governor looked like. So this was Emmanuel's perfect opportunity. After using his charm and charisma, Emmanuel convinced Nelson that the deal was entirely legitimate. To maintain the illusion, Emmanuel told Nelson that the project had to be completely confidential, so they needed to meet somewhere that was outside of both Nigeria and Brazil. Nelson suggested that they meet in London, and Emmanuel agreed. Meticulous planning began, and the team thoroughly prepared for the meeting. Emmanuel was the governor, with other members impersonating the deputy governor and the director of aviation. Their presentation would include detailed airport plans, a well-thought-out business proposal, and even fake documents to support all of their claims. After everything was fully prepared, the team was now ready to fly to London. Emmanuel and his team traveled to London to meet with Nelson to gain credibility. They sent a limousine to pick him up from the airport and accommodated him with a luxurious 5-star hotel suite, compliments of the governor of the central bank. Each team member introduced themselves in their rehearsed roles and showed charm, confidence, and charisma. Nelson believed every word they said. Emmanuel emphasized that the project was confidential and wouldn't start for another 4 to 5 years. However, he convinced Nelson that the funds were needed immediately to hire companies and gather tools and materials. Nelson was hesitant, but Emmanuel assured him that they already had numerous investors waiting and offered Nelson a $10 million commission to resolve the issue. Nelson agreed to the deal. Emmanuel persuaded Nelson to transfer a $3 million deposit as proof of his commitment to the project. Over the next 3 years, Nelson transferred $242 million to Emmanuel and his accomplices. To cover their tracks, they spread the transfers across 17 banks in different countries. The team invested their money into real estate in Nigeria and various regions worldwide and bought shares in multiple companies. They sent fake documents and contracts of businesses they were acquiring for the airport to Nelson to avoid suspicion. The group got away with the heist of the century, but their empire of deception was about to crumble. Please subscribe. If you've enjoyed this video so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. These videos take quite a long time to make, so your support means a lot. Thank you. In 1998, Jamie Lopez, one of the directors at Banco Noroeste, found himself extremely frustrated. His bank was being acquired by the largest bank in Spain for a massive $500 million, and he had an important role to play in this deal. However, he lacked crucial information. He couldn't find out where a third of the bank's capital had gone. It seemed to have vanished into thin air, and all evidence pointed to a man named Nelson Sakaguchi, who would have the answers. Nelson was summoned by the board of directors to explain where the money had gone. However, he kept stalling, which frustrated Jaime. So, Jaime confronted Nelson, grabbed him by the collar, and demanded the last 3 years of documentation for their international operations. Nelson confessed and revealed the details of the $242 million investment deal he had hidden from the rest of the team. This revelation marked the beginning of an international investigation into the third largest banking fraud in history. The investigation traced everything back to Nigeria, but Nigerian banks refused to cooperate. Behind the scenes, Emmanuel and his team had been secretly bribing banks and officials, which made it difficult to get help from them. Eventually, the Nigerian banks were forced to cooperate under pressure from Western banks. They revealed the identities of all the account holders and exposed Emmanuel and his group. However, Nigeria lacked financial fraud laws, which allowed the team to remain free. Meanwhile, Nelson was arrested and charged with money laundering and sentenced to prison for several years. The owners of the bank were furious that their money was gone, so they tried to find ways to recover some of the lost funds. Unfortunately, since almost all of the money was in real estate and investments, they couldn't recover anything. It seemed as if all hope was lost for the Brazilian bank. A new president took over Nigeria, and 4 years later, he established a Financial Crimes Commission in 2003. They heavily pursued Emmanuel and his team, leading to their investigation and arrests in 2004. 5 of them were arrested, but remember, they started with a team of 6. What happened to the 6th member? Well, it turns out that the 6th member mysteriously died in a car crash during the investigation. Many speculate that Emmanuel had them assassinated to keep them from exposing the team, but no one knows for sure. The trial began, but Emmanuel wasn't going to give up so easily. He started bribing officials and members of the jury. It got so bad that the judge had to stop the trial and transfer it to another city because most of the jury had been bribed. Emmanuel then tried to bribe the new officials and jury of that city. However, this time it didn't work. Emmanuel hatched an escape plan and arranged for a warning to be sent to the courtroom during the trial that a bomb was going to explode. Everyone evacuated quickly, and the trial was postponed until the courtroom was completely examined and cleared. They discovered that there weren't any bombs, and the threat was fake. Emmanuel's plan to escape had failed, so instead, he tried to negotiate a reduced sentence in exchange for returning some of the stolen funds. He offered to return $10 million out of the $242 million that they had stolen. But the officials laughed in his face and said they wouldn't accept less than $80 million. Unfortunately for him, that was going to change very quickly, because during his trial, they called his good friend Nelson to the stand. Nelson explained in great detail how Emmanuel and the team impersonated high officials and tricked him into the deal. Emmanuel knew he was screwed, so he agreed to pay $120 million of the stolen money and a $10 million fine to the Nigerian government. He was then sentenced to 25 years. In a world where cunning and audacity often intertwine, Emmanuel emerges as a character who constantly defies the odds. As we journey through his remarkable life, one thing becomes abundantly clear. Emmanuel always has an ace up his sleeve. Our tale begins with Emmanuel's daring escapade, where he managed to maneuver his way out of a potential long prison sentence. Through a series of crafty maneuvers and calculated bribes, he miraculously spent less than 2 years behind bars. What's even more astonishing is that he didn't stop there. With unshakable resolve, he ventured into the realm of real estate, ultimately amassing a staggering fortune of nearly $50 million. But this narrative isn't just about wealth. It's about audacity and ambition. Emmanuel's rise to prominence was punctuated by a heist that etched his name into the annals of history. Pulling off one of the most audacious heists ever recorded, he proved that his cunning knew no bounds. After accumulating wealth beyond imagination, Emmanuel decided to take a step back from the limelight, basking in the lap of luxury. Time passed and the world moved on, but Emmanuel's story was far from over. Fast forward to the year 2016, and our protagonist finds himself ensnared in a web of darkness. A land dispute with a neighboring town spiraled out of control, leading to a fateful event. Emmanuel orchestrated an assault involving over 200 individuals, resulting in the tragic shooting of police officers and the murder of a security guard. Now, Emmanuel resides behind bars, awaiting trial for his involvement in these heinous crimes. But those who know him understand that it's merely a matter of time before he unleashes his bag of tricks once more, defying the odds and escaping the clutches of justice. As we conclude this mesmerizing chapter of Emmanuel's life, we invite you to stay tuned for more captivating stories. If you've enjoyed this riveting narrative, please consider subscribing and turning on post notifications. We have a treasure trove of entertaining videos on the horizon. Click here to delve into our previous video, an exploration of the dark and insane story of other masterminds.